Flying drones is expensive, crashing them even more, and I personally have spent and also wasted way too much money on it. That's why I make this video, to help you not make the same mistakes as I did. Have fun, make notes and hopefully avoid mistakes in the future. I'm flying drones since 6-7 years. My first was a Phantom 4. My second was a Mini 3 Pro. My third as well. My latest drone which I got 1 year ago is the Mavic 3 Pro. And big surprise, it's also my fifth drone. The most expensive and by far the best drone I ever had. Today is not about how to make epic drone footage. Today is only about how to fly safe and get your drone back after flying. Rule number 1 when flying drones, always, and I mean always, keep an SD card backup in your remote controller. Got a little memory card slot right there. Today is one of the days I forgot my memory card in the laptop at home. So that's why it's so good to have a second micro SD card. Next one is don't start your drone on a boat or near the water when it's windy. That's what we are going to do now. If I would start here, the drone gets a hit from the side and just flips over. We don't want that, obviously. So I wait till the wind is a bit slower. And I can start. The critical point is starting. Once the drone is in the air, you don't have a problem at all. I guess one of the most common ways to crash drones is that people just underestimate the percentage needed to come back to the starting point, as this also was one of my mistakes I did in the past. I was flying over the sea and we were still far away and the battery dropped to 7%, and at this point the drone starts to slowly sink. Since then I also have an eye on my distance as well as my battery level to make sure that I will make it back home. But in case you are in that situation and your drone is far out and you still have a certain percent of battery left, there's one solution which I learned after crashing the drone. In my case, it was about 7% left where the drone starts sinking and you can't do anything about it. You can't press cancel, you can't press no, I want to fly further. The drone just starts sinking. The only thing is what you can do, you can hold your left joystick up. That's the only way you can stop it from landing, while in my case it was over the water. Remember that for any case of low battery. I tested it out, so I flew until the battery remained at 10%. Short after, it starts sinking, and by simply pressing the joystick up, I managed to fly another 900 meters, which would have saved my old drone. Modern problems require modern solutions. That's the case for the following problem: sensors. Most drones nowadays, they have sensors to avoid crashing into objects, walls, houses, trees, etc. That's fine, that's absolutely perfect until you turn them off. So what I want to say with this, only use sports mode when it's necessary, when it's really necessary. Second, if you turn the sensors off, you have to make sure that you turn it on afterwards. That's also the reason why I crashed in the staircase, because I turned it off for some reason. I simply forgot to turn it back on. And because I like to make mistakes at least for a second time, I crashed my Mavic 3 Pro this year. In this case, I just put my drone in sports mode, and in sports mode you also don't have any sensors activated. I flew sideways, I did not take a look and just crashed into first the stone and then lesson learned. Make sure to turn your sensors back on after turning them off and avoid sports mode for as long as you can, or make sure there are no obstacles in the way and you can fly safely. One thing I learned here in Greece is birds. Birds normally they avoid drones or other birds as well. They don't want to crash into anything, so they fly around drones. It usually isn't a problem at all. But, and that's a big That's a big point for me because I have no experience with it. We got some Greifvögel
Birds of prey.
nearby, and I don't know if the drone maybe is like food for them. Check if there are any big birds nearby, which potentially could be a problem. In the last 6-7 years, there was a couple of, let's say, close moments to big crowds of birds, but it never happened anything because the birds just simply fly around, and if you come close, they fly away. The next point I want to mention are cables and any tiny little or thin objects. For example, power lines. Small trees, thin objects in general. By law, of course, you should not fly this far away, so you can still see the drone, but sometimes it happens. Yeah, and this is a point you have to know when flying far away, to pay attention to thin objects or in general things you cannot really see on your small display of the controller or your tablet or smartphone or whatever. You can't see these things before you are 10 meters away. So you have no reaction time to stop it and you will crash fully into it. There are lots of videos on the internet. It's a good comedy evening to watch other drones crash, but I don't recommend do it on your own. My last point on the list of today is relatively new, caused by the new cameras, which at least DJI drones have got since, I think, 2-3 years. The zoom cameras. When you zoom in, for example, the Mavic 3 Pro has a 3x and a 7x zoom lens. When you zoom in for certain shots, you especially have to make sure that there's nothing on the left or right side of the drone. Because normally you got a very wide lens through which you can see most of the landscape around the drone. But when you take the 7x lens, you don't see what is near the drone. It's highly risky to crash the drone if you don't pay attention for that. I don't want to make a boring outro, so just fly safe. Goodbye.